Hello, this is BBC News and these are the latest headlines in the UK and around the world. NATO foreign ministers are to meet as images of destruction and allegations of war crimes continue to emerge from towns surrounding Kyiv following the retreat of Russian forces. The UK, US and the EU are expected to impose fresh sanctions on Russia. They're likely to target strategic industries including energy, oil and gas. Millions of people will now pay more national insurance as an increase to contributions comes into effect today. The UK Health Secretary Sajid Javid says it's a necessary move to support the NHS.
If we want the NHS to catch up to deal with this COVID backlog, if we want better adult social care, the money has to come from somewhere.
Do you think national insurance should go up to pay for health and social care? Or is it the wrong time? Get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm at Annita BBC. Married couples in England and Wales will be able to begin divorce proceedings without apportioning blame from today as new no-fault divorce legislation comes into force. Calories must now appear on the menus of food and drink businesses with more than 250 staff in England. I'm in love with your body. And Ed Sheeran has won a High Court battle over whether parts of his 2017 hit Shape of You copied another artist's song. Hello and welcome to you if you're watching here in the UK or around the world. The United States, the UK and the EU will impose more sanctions on Russia amid allegations of war crimes in the Ukrainian city of Bucha. Reports are also emerging of hospitals being bombed in the southwestern city of Mykolaiv. 3 were targeted, possibly with cluster bombs, according to the humanitarian charity Médecins Sans Frontières. And in Mariupol, seen on this map in the southeast, the situation is worsening. Most residents are without medicine, heat or water. It's reported that the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister says 11 humanitarian corridors are being set up, but that residents of Mariupol need to use their own vehicles to get out. Aid agencies have been struggling to reach the city. Well, NATO's foreign ministers will meet this afternoon to discuss how to respond and to support Ukraine in its next phase of war. The Czech Republic is sending tanks and other armoured vehicles to bolster the Ukrainian military. It's the first NATO country to give tanks to Ukraine. The Czech Defence Minister confirmed on Twitter that the country is sending essential military material to Ukrainian friends and will continue to do so. No other details were given. Well, Rob Cameron is in Prague with the latest. Rob Cameron reporting from Prague. Well, you'll know, of course, that yesterday the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to the UN Security Council. He spoke to them in very graphic terms about what's happening in his country, what he'd seen in Bucha the day before. Today, Volodymyr Zelensky has been addressing the Irish Parliament, and he has told parliamentarians that Russia is using hunger as a weapon and as an instrument of domination. He says that Russia is using hunger as a weapon and as an instrument of domination. Well, let's go now to our correspondent in Lviv in Ukraine, Emma Vardy. And when we think of hunger, Emma, we absolutely think of Mariupol, don't we? Because we've been hearing for weeks now that people there are short of food, water, medicines, heat. Tell us what the latest is on the situation there. I know that the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine was talking about setting up some humanitarian corridors, but has there been any progress on that? Emma, thank you very much. Emma Vardy in the Ukrainian city of Lviv. Well, NATO foreign ministers are gathering in Brussels for a couple of days of talks on how best to support Ukraine in this next phase. Nick Beek is in Brussels for us. Hello to you, Nick. And NATO is certainly talking very much about what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. They believe that there is going to be a renewed focus from Russian forces or by Russian forces on the eastern Donbass region. What more at this stage will they be doing to try to support Ukraine? Nick, thank you very much. Nick Beake in Brussels, who will be keeping us up to date on those NATO discussions there. Well, Britain, Australia and the US have agreed to work together to research hypersonic weapons and ways to counter them. Hypersonic missiles, which travel at several times the speed of sound, were reportedly used for the first time in combat by Russia in Ukraine last month. Well, let's speak to our security correspondent, Frank Gardner. Frank, hello to you. And is there a feeling with the UK, Australia and the US that they're playing catch up with this, if indeed this is the type of missile that Russia used last month? Frank, thank you very much for explaining all of that to us. Frank Gardner, our security correspondent. And I'm joined now by Edward Stringer, who is a senior officer in the Royal Air Force and also the Assistant Chief of the Defence Staff in Operations at the Ministry of Defence from 2015 to 2018. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today at BBC News as well. And as everyone looks to try to work out what Russia's next move is, I guess what we do know is that Vladimir Putin, at the beginning of this war, sent his troops into Ukraine, thought it would be relatively easy to capture Kyiv and achieve their goals, and that has not been the case. So whatever he does next, one assumes he will want to make sure that from Russia's perspective, the military strategy is rather more successful. Senior officer in the Royal Air Force, formerly also Assistant Chief of the Defence Staff in Operations at the Ministry of Defence from 2015 through to 2018. Really interesting to hear your analysis. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And a quick reminder for you that we will be taking your questions on the war in Ukraine on Thursday morning at 11:30 BST. We'll have guests answering a range of questions on various aspects of the war, from how it's being fought, how it might end, and the human consequences. And you can get in touch on Twitter with your questions using the hashtag BBC Your Questions. You can also email them to us on yourquestions@bbc.co.uk. Police in the Romanian capital Bucharest say a car has crashed into the gate of the Russian embassy, bursting into flames and killing the driver. It crashed into a fence outside the building early this morning but didn't enter the compound. It's unclear whether the crash was an accident or deliberate. Let's move on now and bring you some news, the breaking news of the last 30 minutes or so about Ed Sheeran, who has won a High Court battle over whether his hit Shape of You copied another artist's song. In the past hour, a High Court judge in London has ruled that he neither deliberately nor subconsciously copied parts of a 2015 song by the grime artist Sami Chokri. Our entertainment correspondent Mark Savage has the background to the case. And we can join Mark now outside the High Court. Mark, hello to you. And I'm just looking at a statement released in the last few minutes by Ed Sheeran and his co-writers Johnny McDaid and Steve Mack about this case. Tell us what they've said. Mark, thank you very much for that. Mark Savage at the High Court. Now, millions of people will now pay more national insurance as an increase to contributions comes into effect. The increase of 1 1/4 pence in the pound will apply to employees, businesses and the self-employed, with the money raised earmarked for health and social care. Anyone earning more than £9,880 a year will pay the increased contribution. But after a change announced in the UK Chancellor's spring statement, from July that will increase to £12,570. So that means over the next year, anyone earning less than around £34,000 a year will pay less national insurance than they did last year. And as you can see on this graph, people earning £20,000 a year will pay £178 less in 2022-23, whilst those on £50,000 will pay £197 more. I'm joined now by our political correspondent, Nick Eardley, for more on this. And Nick, there was a promise in the Conservative Party's election manifesto at the last election saying that there wouldn't be an increase in national insurance over the life of this Parliament. But now there is, and it comes at a time when there is a cost of living crisis. So what is the government saying about the justifications for all of this? Okay, Nick, thank you very much for that, Nick Eardley. And with me here in the studio is our personal finance correspondent, Kevin Peachy. Kevin, hello to you. So if you're looking at this and you're trying to work out what impact this is going to have on your finances, just take us through how it's going to affect people, depending, of course, on how much they earn. Good advice, Kevin. Thank you very much. Our personal finance correspondent, Kevin Peachy there. You have been getting in touch with me about this story today about national insurance, the rise. And let me just read out a few of those tweets. Margaret Hughes writes, this national insurance rise is another nail in the coffin for struggling working class people. They have been battered at every turn. Why no windfall tax on oil companies? Why do MPs get a pay rise of more than £2,000? She continues, she says she will not vote Tory again. This is from quite a few people actually getting in touch on a similar theme. Adam Milford with this one, re-national insurance contributions. What happened to the £350 million per week promised to the NHS by Johnson in the Brexit campaign? Why do we need to pay more national insurance for it? And similar, David Murray, regarding the increase in national insurance, which the government say is vital to the NHS. Whatever happened to the sums of money that were all over the sides of buses in the run-up to Brexit? Where did those funds go? Quite a few messages on that theme. If you want to get in touch about this story or any of the other stories we're covering today, you can do that on Twitter. I'm at Annita BBC. Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Ireland's political leaders to use their influence to convince other EU nations to introduce even tougher sanctions to halt the Russian war machine. He addressed the Irish Parliament this morning and started on the humanitarian crisis hitting Ukraine as a price of the Russian invasion. Volodymyr Zelensky addressing the Irish Parliament a little earlier. Well, the medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, says hospitals have been attacked in the Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv. Let's speak to the charity's emergency communications coordinator, Avril Benoit. She joins us from the Ukrainian city of Lviv. Avril, thank you for joining us. And tell us more about the apparent use of cluster bombs to attack hospitals in Mykolaiv. What more are you hearing? And what more can you tell us? Because I think at the moment it's mainly MSF reporting on this. Avril Benoit from Médecins Sans Frontières, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Scientists in England have warned that the number of COVID cases in older age groups who are most at risk from the virus is continuing to increase. The REACT study by Imperial College London suggests that more than 6% of England's population were infected last month. That's double the rate in February. But the data also indicates that cases may have peaked in children and younger adults. Let's get more on this with our health correspondent, Jim Reid. Jim, hello to you. Let's begin with that last point at the moment. The data indicating that cases may have peaked in children and younger adults. Tell us a bit more about that. Okay, Jim, thank you for talking us through all of that. Jim Reid, our health correspondent. A British man and his 9-year-old son have been killed by a landslide in Australia. 2 other members of the family were critically injured by falling rocks in the Blue Mountains near Sydney. A 15-year-old girl was unhurt. Phil Mercer has the latest. Archaeologists in Peru have unearthed a mummy that could be 1,000 years old. The preserved remains date back to before the Incan Empire. The discovery, which was made at an archaeological site near Lima, has been described as one of the most important finds at both a national and international level. The BBC's Tim Ullman reports. And finally for you this hour, a Sumatran rhino has successfully given birth in an Indonesian sanctuary after suffering 8 miscarriages in the last 17 years. The female baby calf was born to mum Rosa in Waikambas National Park on Thursday. And there is the baby, trying to get to her feet, doing pretty well. Officials say both mother and calf are doing well. Gorgeous pictures. Joanna Gosling will be here next. For now, it's bye from me. You're watching BBC News.
Hello.